Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Meridian, watching the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. After 18 months of travel through deep space, humanity was finally about to meet its galactic neighbors. The station was beautiful in a way that took his breath away. It looked like a giant crystal flower floating in the darkness, with petals made of gleaming metal and glass that caught the light of distant stars. Distance to station, 200,000 kilometers and closing, reported Lieutenant Katie Bell from her position at the communications console. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the excitement underneath. Everyone on the ship felt it. This was the moment that would change everything for the human race. Dr. Lisa Park walked onto the bridge carrying a tablet full of notes. She had spent the last 6 months studying everything they knew about the aliens they were about to meet. "I still can't believe we're really doing this," she said, stopping next to Jake's command chair. 5 different species all living together in peace for over 3,000 years. Jake nodded, but his attention was drawn to the man standing near the security station. Commander Alex Stone looked tense, his eyes constantly moving across the tactical displays. Stone was a former Marine who had seen combat in the Outer Colony Wars. He had volunteered for this mission, but Jake knew he wasn't comfortable with how lightly armed they were. "Something bothering you, Commander?" Jake asked. Stone turned to face him. "Just thinking about our defensive capabilities, sir. 12 security personnel and basic ship weapons against unknown alien technology. It makes me nervous." "This is a diplomatic mission, Alex. We're here to make friends, not fight wars." "I know that, sir, but friendship requires trust, and trust takes time to build. What if they decide they don't like us before we get that chance?" Before Jake could answer, Katie's voice cut through the conversation. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from the station. They're speaking English." "Put it on speakers." A voice filled the bridge, speaking with perfect pronunciation but an odd musical quality. "Welcome, humans of Earth. I am Counselor Vexhai of the Zephyrian people. We have been waiting eagerly for your arrival. Please follow the navigation beacon to Docking Bay 7. Jake felt a mix of relief and wonder. "Thank you, Counselor Vexhai. We are honored to be here." The docking process took 2 hours. The alien technology was far more advanced than anything humans had developed, but it was also designed to accommodate ships from many different species. The docking bay was enormous, easily 10 times larger than any human facility. Ambassador Helen Cross joined Jake and his senior staff as they prepared to leave the ship. She was a veteran diplomat who had handled the most difficult negotiations on Earth. If anyone could represent humanity well, it was her. "Remember," she said as they walked toward the airlock, "we are the new species here. We observe, we learn, and we show respect. Our goal is to prove that humanity deserves a place in galactic civilization." The airlock opened, and they stepped into an alien world. The corridor beyond was wide enough for 20 people to walk side by side. The walls were made of some kind of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. The air smelled like flowers and rain, nothing like the recycled atmosphere of their ship. Gravity felt normal, which was a relief after months in space. Their guide was waiting for them. Counselor Vexhai was tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished silver. His large eyes were a deep blue color, and when he smiled, Jake could see that his teeth were perfectly white and sharp. He wore robes that seemed to float around his body without any visible support. "Welcome to Harmony Station," Vexhai said, extending his arms in what was clearly a greeting gesture. "I hope your journey was comfortable." "Very much so," Ambassador Cross replied, copying the gesture. "We are grateful for this opportunity to meet you and the other council members." They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Jake saw other aliens along the way. Some looked like walking trees with faces carved into their bark. Others were made of what appeared to be living crystal, their bodies reflecting light in rainbow patterns. One group looked almost human except for their bright green skin and extra arms. "How many species live on this station?" Dr. Park asked. "Currently, we have representatives from 47 different worlds," Vexhai replied, "though the council itself is made up of only 5 major species. We are the ones who built this confederation and established the laws that keep peace throughout our region of the galaxy. Commander Stone walked slightly behind the group, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. Jake noticed that none of the aliens they passed appeared to be armed. There were no visible security measures, no guards, no weapons of any kind. It was like walking through a peaceful city park. They entered a vast chamber with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. The floor was transparent, giving the impression of floating in space. 5 large platforms were arranged in a circle, each one designed for a different type of being. The introductions began. Besides Vexhai and his fellow Zephyrians, there were the Crystalline Collective, beings made of living mineral who spoke in harmonious chords. The Verdani were the tree-like creatures Jake had seen in the corridors. They communicated through chemical scents that were translated by machines built into the chamber. The Aquari lived in water-filled suits and had tentacles instead of arms. The Mechanists were a mix of organic and artificial parts, having merged with their own technology centuries ago. "We have studied your species for some time," said the Crystalline Collective representative, its voice sounding like music. "Your art and literature show great beauty and wisdom. Your scientific achievements are impressive for such a young civilization." Ambassador Cross smiled. "We are honored by your attention. Humanity has always dreamed of finding others among the stars." "Tell us," said Vexhai, "how does your species resolve conflicts? We have studied your history and found evidence of many wars. How have you moved beyond such primitive behavior?" Jake felt the temperature in the room seem to drop. This was the question they had all been dreading. Earth's history was full of violence and war. How could they explain that to beings who had lived in peace for thousands of years? Ambassador Cross took a breath before answering. "Humanity has indeed experienced conflicts in our past. But we have learned from those experiences. We have developed international laws, diplomatic institutions, and economic cooperation that have greatly reduced warfare on our world. We believe that reason and negotiation can solve most disputes." The aliens seemed satisfied with this answer. They asked more questions about human culture, technology, and philosophy. The meeting lasted for hours, and by the end, Jake felt that it had been a great success. As they walked back to their ship, Dr. Park seemed excited. "Did you see how interested they were in our medical research? And they loved the music samples we brought." "They seem like good people," Ambassador Cross agreed. "I think we can build a real partnership here." Commander Stone was quiet until they reached the ship. Then he pulled Jake aside. "Captain, did you notice something about their questions?" "What do you mean?" "They only asked about how we resolve conflicts peacefully. They never asked about what we do when peace isn't possible, what happens when diplomacy fails, what we do when someone refuses to negotiate." Jake frowned. Maybe those situations don't come up for them. Maybe. Or maybe they've never faced a real threat. "Sir, in all their questions about our military history, they never asked about our defensive capabilities. They never asked about our weapons technology or our strategic doctrines. It's like they can't imagine a situation where force might be necessary. Is that a bad thing?" Stone looked back toward the station, its crystal surfaces still glowing in the darkness. "I hope not, sir. But in my experience, civilizations that forget how to fight usually don't survive long when they meet someone who hasn't forgotten." Jake followed his gaze to the peaceful station. Inside, representatives from dozens of worlds were working together, building something beautiful and harmonious. It was everything humanity had hoped to find among the stars. He just hoped Commander Stone was wrong about what might happen if that peace was ever threatened. 3 months had passed since the humans first arrived at Harmony Station. The UES Meridian now sat permanently docked at the station, serving as Earth's first embassy to the galactic community. Captain Jake Morrison had grown comfortable with the daily routine of meetings, cultural exchanges, and scientific collaboration that defined their new life among the stars. Dr. Lisa Park spent most of her time in the Zephyrian research labs, working alongside scientists who had been studying life for centuries longer than humans had existed. The lab was a marvel of alien technology, with equipment that could analyze biological samples at the molecular level in seconds. Today she was examining plant samples from a dozen different worlds, comparing how life had evolved under different conditions. Fascinating, said Dr. Yelthera, her Zephyrian colleague. The tall, silver-skinned alien leaned over the display showing DNA structures. Your human immune system is remarkably aggressive. Most species develop immunity through cooperation with beneficial organisms, but humans actually attack and destroy threats. Lisa nodded, though she felt a slight unease at the word aggressive. Humans have always lived in a competitive environment. Our planet has many dangerous diseases and parasites. We had to develop strong defenses to survive. It explains much about your species' resilience, Yelthara replied. But it also shows a concerning pattern. Even at the cellular level, humans choose conflict over cooperation. The comment bothered Lisa more than she wanted to admit. Over the past 3 months, she had noticed that the aliens seemed to focus only on certain aspects of human culture. They loved human music, art, and literature. They were fascinated by human medical advances and space exploration. But whenever discussions turned to human history or sociology, they seemed to quickly change the subject. Lieutenant Katie Bell was having similar experiences in her role as cultural liaison. She had become fluent in 3 alien languages and was working on a 4th. Today she was meeting with a group of young aliens who wanted to learn about Earth. "Tell us about human festivals," asked Zindar, a young Verdani whose bark-like skin showed patterns of excitement. "We have heard they involve music and dancing." Katie smiled. "We have many festivals. There's New Year's celebrations, harvest festivals, religious holidays. People come together to share food, music, and stories." "What about your military parades?" asked another student, this one from the Aquari species. "We have seen images of humans marching in formation with weapons." The question made Katie pause. She had noticed that whenever she mentioned anything related to human military traditions, the aliens became uncomfortable. "Those are ceremonies to honor people who served in the military. It's a way of showing respect for those who protected our communities." The students looked confused. "Protected from what?" asked Zindar. "From other humans who might want to harm them," Katie explained carefully. The room fell silent. The alien students exchanged glances, and Katie could see they were disturbed by the concept. Finally, the Aquari student spoke up. "But why would humans harm other humans? Are you not all the same species?" Katie realized she was facing a fundamental difference in thinking. These aliens had never experienced the kind of conflicts that had shaped human history. They couldn't understand why members of the same species would fight each other. "It's complicated," she said finally. "Humans have different cultures, different beliefs, different needs. Sometimes those differences lead to conflicts. But surely you talk about these differences and find solutions?" the Verdani student pressed. "We try to," Katie replied, "but it doesn't always work." The meeting ended awkwardly, with the alien students clearly confused and troubled by what they had learned. Katie walked back to the human section of the station feeling frustrated. She was supposed to be building bridges between species, but every conversation seemed to highlight how different humans were from their new galactic neighbors. Commander Alex Stone was having his own concerns. He spent his days reviewing station security protocols and studying the galactic political situation. What he found worried him deeply. Today he was meeting with Security Chief Mordan, a mechanist who was responsible for keeping order on the Kier station. Mordan was an interesting being, part organic and part machine, with optical sensors that could see in multiple spectrums. "I've been reviewing your security procedures," Stone said, sitting across from Mordan in the security office. "I notice you don't have any weapons on the station." "Weapons are not necessary," Mordan replied, his mechanical voice showing no emotion. "We have devices that can temporarily disable aggressive individuals, but violence is extremely rare among Council species." "What about external threats? What if someone attacks the station from outside?" Mordan paused, his optical sensors focusing on Stone. "Why would anyone attack us? We are a peaceful research and diplomatic facility. We have no military value." Stone felt a chill. "What about the hegemony?" I've been reading reports about their expansion in the Outer Rim. The hegemony is a concern, Mordan admitted. But they are a rational species. They seek territory and resources. Economic pressure and diplomatic negotiation will eventually convince them to respect council boundaries. Have you ever actually fought them? Fought them? Mordan seemed confused by the question. We have had diplomatic exchanges. They have made demands, and we have offered counter-proposals. It is a normal negotiation process. Stone stared at the security chief. What if they're not interested in negotiation? What if they just want to take what you have? Then we would increase our economic incentives and seek mediation through neutral parties, Mordan replied. All conflicts can be resolved through proper communication and mutual understanding. After the meeting, Stone walked through the station's corridors feeling deeply troubled. The aliens' faith in peaceful solutions was admirable, but it was also naive. They had never faced an enemy who wanted to destroy them rather than negotiate with them. He found Captain Morrison in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The captain had been spending more time alone lately, clearly feeling the weight of representing humanity to the galaxy. Sir, we need to talk about the security situation, Stone said. Morrison turned to face him. What's on your mind, Commander? These aliens have no understanding of real warfare. They think every conflict can be solved with talking and economic pressure. They've never faced an enemy who wants to wipe them out completely. Maybe that's a good thing, Morrison replied. Maybe they've evolved beyond the need for warfare, or maybe they've just been lucky, Stone countered. Sir, I've been studying the hegemony reports. They're not just expanding their territory. They're completely emptying the worlds they conquer. No survivors, no prisoners, no negotiations. That's not the behavior of a species interested in diplomacy. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we need to be prepared for the possibility that this peaceful galaxy is about to face something it's never dealt with before. And when that happens, our new friends are going to need help they don't even know they need. Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm that echoed through the station. Both men rushed to the nearest communication panel, where Katie's voice was broadcasting an emergency message. All senior staff report to the council chamber immediately. We're receiving reports of attacks on the Outer Rim worlds. In the council chamber, the atmosphere was tense but not panicked. The 5 council leaders were gathered around a holographic display showing the outer edge of their territory. Red markers indicated 3 worlds that had gone silent in the past hour. We lost contact with Kepler 438b, Wolf 359c, and Gliese 667cc, reported Counselor Vexhai. Long-range sensors show massive energy signatures at each location. Could it be natural phenomena? Asked the Crystalline Collective representative. Unlikely, replied the Verdani counselor. The energy patterns are consistent with artificial weapons, but far more powerful than anything in our databases. Ambassador Cross stood with the other human representatives, watching the display with growing concern. Have you tried to contact the hegemony leadership? We sent a diplomatic message an hour ago, Vexhai replied. We asked them to clarify their actions and requested immediate negotiations. What was their response? Morrison asked. The council chamber fell silent. Finally, Vexhai spoke. They have not responded to our communications. Dr. Park stepped forward, her face pale. I've been analyzing the sensor data from those worlds. The energy signatures are consistent with planet-wide sterilization. Nothing could survive that level of bombardment. The aliens looked shocked. Surely you're mistaken, said the Aquari counselor. No species would deliberately destroy entire worlds. The resources alone would be worth preserving. Unless they don't want the resources, Stone said grimly. Unless they just want everything else dead. The council members turned to look at him, clearly disturbed by his words. That's impossible, Vexhai said. No rational species would engage in such wasteful destruction. What if they're not rational by your standards? Stone pressed. What if they see other species as competition to be eliminated rather than partners, to negotiate with? Before anyone could respond, another alarm sounded. This time, the display showed a massive fleet of ships approaching the station. The hour passed like a nightmare. Council leaders gathered in their emergency chamber, arguing about how to respond to the hegemony ultimatum. Some wanted to evacuate the station immediately. Others insisted they should try to negotiate. None of them seemed to understand that the gray-skinned aliens who had threatened them were not interested in talking. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the corner with his senior staff, watching the debate with growing frustration. The aliens kept using words like misunderstanding and communication breakdown, as if the hegemony fleet outside was just a diplomatic error that could be fixed with the right conversation. "We should send another message," suggested Counselor Fexhai. "Perhaps we can offer them something they want in exchange for peace." "What do you offer to someone who just destroyed 3 entire worlds?" Commander Alex Stone asked quietly. His question made the aliens uncomfortable, but nobody answered. Dr. Lisa Park was studying the sensor readings from the destroyed worlds. What she found made her sick. "The energy signatures show complete atmospheric burning," she reported. "They didn't just attack military targets or cities. They sterilized the entire surface of each planet. Every living thing is dead." The crystalline, collective representative made a sound like breaking glass. "That cannot be correct. No species would waste resources on such complete destruction." "Unless destruction was the goal," Stone said. "Unless they want the planets empty for their own use." Lieutenant Katie Bell was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. The reports coming in were getting worse by the hour. "I'm receiving distress calls from 17 different systems," she announced. "The hegemony isn't just attacking this sector. They're hitting targets across the entire outer rim." The scope of the attack was beyond anything the Council had ever imagined. This wasn't a territorial dispute or a resource conflict. This was systematic extermination on a galactic scale. "How many ships are in their fleet?" Morrison asked. "Sensors show 437 vessels," replied Security Chief Mordan. "Our defense fleet has 68 ships, but they are designed for peacekeeping, not combat." "What kind of weapons do your ships carry?" Stone asked. Mordan looked confused by the question. "Non-lethal crowd control devices, electromagnetic pulse generators for disabling hostile electronics, and containment fields for restraining aggressive individuals." Stone stared at him. "You're planning to fight a war with crowd control weapons?" "We do not fight wars," Mordan replied stiffly. "We maintain order and protect civilians. Violence is always a last resort, and even then, we minimize casualties." "They just killed billions of people," Stone said, his voice rising. "How exactly do you plan to minimize casualties when dealing with enemies who specialize in maximum casualties?" Before anyone could answer, the station shook violently. Emergency. Lights began flashing and alarms sounded throughout the facility. The hegemony fleet had opened fire. Morrison grabbed his communicator. "All human personnel report to the Meridian immediately. We're going to battle stations." The Council leaders looked shocked. "You cannot seriously be considering fighting them," Fexhai said. "Your ship has only basic defensive systems." "Basic defensive systems are better than crowd control weapons," Morrison replied. "Commander Stone, get our people armed and ready for boarding action." "Sir, we only have 12. Marines and basic small arms," Stone reminded him. "Then we'll have to make them count." The battle for Harmony Station began badly for the Council forces. Their ships were fast and maneuverable, but their weapons were designed to disable rather than destroy. The hegemony vessels absorbed the Dao, non-lethal attacks without slowing down and responded with devastating firepower. Within minutes, half the Council defense fleet was destroyed or disabled. The survivors fell back toward the station, trying to use its shields as protection. But the hegemony weapons cut through the shields like they were made of paper. On the station, panic spread through the civilian population. Thousands of aliens ran through the corridors trying to reach escape pods or find shelter. The station's security forces tried to maintain order, but they had never dealt with anything like this before. Commander Stone and his Marines had armed themselves with the best weapons the human ship could provide. It wasn't much by military standards, but it was far more than anyone else on the station had. They took positions at key points throughout the human section, preparing for the inevitable boarding attempt. Remember, Stone told his team over the radio. These aliens have been living in peace for 3,000 years. They've never seen real combat. When the shooting starts, they're going to panic. Stay calm, stay focused, and protect the civilians. Sergeant Maria Santos was positioned at the main corridor leading to the human embassy. She had trained as a combat medic, but her knowledge of anatomy made her deadly with a rifle. She understood exactly where to hit different species to stop them quickly. Corporal Danny Rivers was in the engineering section with 2 other Marines. Rivers had been an explosives expert before joining the diplomatic mission, and he was already thinking about how to use the station's maintenance supplies to create improvised weapons. The first hegemony boarding pods attached to the station's hull like metal parasites. Each pod carried 20 soldiers equipped with weapons that could punch through the station's walls. They cut their way inside and began systematically moving through the corridors. The station security forces met them first. Mordan led a team of 20 officers armed with their standard non-lethal weapons. They tried to use containment fields to restrain the invaders, but the hegemony soldiers walked through the energy barriers like they didn't exist. The slaughter was quick and brutal. The hegemony weapons were designed to kill, not disable. Within minutes, Mordan and his entire team were dead. The invaders continued moving toward the station's critical systems, killing anyone who got in their way. That's when they ran into the humans. Sergeant Santos saw them coming down the main corridor. There were 12 hegemony soldiers, each one nearly 7 feet tall and covered in dark armor. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never faced real opposition. Santos let them get close before opening fire. Her first shot took down the lead soldier with a precise hit to the head. Her second and third shots dropped 2 more before they could react. The survivors dove for cover, but Santos had chosen her position well. The corridor gave them nowhere to hide. "Contact in Sector 7, she reported calmly. 12 hostiles, now 9. They're armed with energy weapons and heavy armor. The hegemony soldiers had never faced this kind of resistance. In all their previous conquests, they had fought civilians and lightly armed security forces. They had never encountered professional soldiers who knew how to kill efficiently. Santos moved to a new position and continued firing. Each shot was carefully aimed, targeting weak points in the alien armor. The hegemony soldiers tried to return fire, but their weapons were designed for mass destruction, not precision combat in confined spaces. In the engineering section, Corporal Rivers was having similar success. When the hegemony soldiers tried to take control of the station's power systems, they found the corridors filled with improvised explosive devices. Rivers had used his knowledge of chemistry and engineering to turn maintenance supplies into deadly weapons. The first explosion caught 3 hegemony soldiers in a narrow passage. The blast was designed to maximize damage in a confined space, and none of them survived. The second explosion brought down part of the ceiling, trapping more invaders. "Engineering section secured," Rivers reported. 8 hostiles down, unknown, number still in the area. Throughout the station, the pattern was the same. Wherever the hegemony soldiers encountered human resistance, they were stopped cold. The humans fought with a combination of skill and ruthlessness that the invaders had never seen before. But it was the psychological impact that really mattered. For the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, the hegemony forces were taking casualties, real casualties. Soldiers who had considered themselves unstoppable were being killed by what they had assumed would be easy prey. Commander Stone coordinated the defense from the Human Command Center. He watched the tactical displays showing hegemony forces retreating from multiple locations. His Marines had not just stopped the boarding attempt, they had actually driven the invaders back to their ships. "All teams, report status," he ordered. "Sector 7 clear," Santos reported. 15 hostiles eliminated, no friendly casualties. "Engineering secured," Rivers added. 12 hostiles down, 2 wounded friendlies. Similar reports came in from other positions. The Marines had not just won their fights, they had won them decisively. The hegemony boarding force was in full retreat. On the bridge of the lead hegemony vessel, the alien commander stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In hundreds of previous conquests, no boarding force had ever been repelled. The humans had done something that was supposed to be impossible. Recall all boarding parties, the commander ordered. Prepare for orbital bombardment. But even as the hegemony fleet pulled back to a safe distance, something had changed. The invaders who had seemed unstoppable just hours before were now hesitant and uncertain. They had learned that there were beings in this galaxy who could fight back. The silence in the council chamber was heavy and uncomfortable. 3 days had passed since the hegemony attack on Harmony Station, and the alien leaders were still trying to understand what they had witnessed. The humans had saved them, but the way they had done it had shaken the foundation of everything the council believed about civilization and warfare. Ambassador Helen Cross stood before the 5 council leaders, feeling like she was on trial. In a way, she was. The formal charges had been filed that morning. Commander Alex Stone was accused of war crimes, excessive force, and violation of the Galactic Convention on Warfare Ethics. The aliens wanted him arrested and put on trial. "The evidence is clear," said Councillor Vexhai, his silver skin looking pale in the chamber's light. "Your military personnel deliberately killed hegemony soldiers who could have been captured alive. They used weapons designed to cause maximum suffering rather than quick incapacitation. They showed no mercy to wounded enemies." Cross took a deep breath before responding. "Counselor, those hegemony soldiers had just finished destroying 3 entire worlds. Billions of innocent people are dead because of them. They came here to kill everyone on this station." "That does not justify abandoning all moral principles," replied the crystalline collective representative, its voice ringing like broken glass. "The moment we begin to act like our enemies, we become no better than they are." Dr. Lisa Park stepped forward from where she had been standing with the other humans. She carried a data tablet filled with her analysis of the hegemony attacks. "With respect, counselors, I think you're missing something important about what we're facing here." She activated the chamber's display screen, showing images from the destroyed worlds. The pictures were horrifying. Entire continents had been burned down to bare rock. Oceans had been boiled away. Nothing lived on any of the 3 planets. "This isn't normal warfare," Park continued. "The hegemony didn't just attack military targets or even cities. They sterilized every square inch of planetary surface. They killed every plant, every animal, every microorganism. This level of destruction serves no strategic purpose unless complete extermination is the goal." The Verdani counselor, whose tree-like form rustled with distress, spoke up. "But surely some of their soldiers must have families, must have reasons for their actions beyond simple cruelty. If we could communicate with them, understand their motivations." "I captured one of their soldiers during the boarding action," Commander Stone said quietly from his position near the back of the chamber. "Would you like to know what I learned from him?" The council leaders exchanged uncomfortable glances. They had heard rumors about Stone's interrogation methods, but none of them had wanted the details. The interrogation was conducted using methods that violate our standards for prisoner treatment, Vexhai said stiffly. "The prisoner told me everything I needed to know," Stone replied. "The hegemony doesn't want our territory or our resources. They don't want to rule us or enslave us. They want us completely gone. Every species that isn't part of their collective is scheduled for total elimination. They're not expanding across the galaxy. They're sterilizing it." Lieutenant Katie Bell had been monitoring communications from across the galaxy for the past 3 days. The reports she was receiving painted an increasingly desperate picture. "The attacks are continuing," she reported. 17 more worlds have gone silent in the past 72 hours. The pattern is always the same: complete destruction of all life forms. Captain Jake Morrison watched the council leaders struggle with this information. He could see that they wanted to believe there was still a peaceful solution, some way to negotiate or compromise. The idea that an entire species could be dedicated to genocide was simply beyond their understanding. "There has to be something we can offer them," the Aquari counselor said desperately. "Territory, resources, technology. No species acts without reason." "Their reason is simple," Stone said. "They believe the galaxy belongs to them, and everything else is contamination to be cleaned up. You can't negotiate with that mindset because there's nothing you have that they want except your absence." The debate continued for hours. The council wanted to maintain their ethical standards even in the face of total extinction. They spoke about the importance of moral authority, about not becoming monsters in order to fight monsters. They talked about the slippery slope of justifying violence, about how easy it would be to lose their civilization's soul in the pursuit of victory. Morrison found their idealism admirable, but also frustrating. These aliens had built something, beautiful and peaceful, but they seemed unable to understand that sometimes beauty and peace had to be defended with ugly and violent methods. The crisis deepened when Security Chief Mordan's replacement brought disturbing news to the chamber. "We have discovered evidence of hegemony infiltration," announced Chief Colvex, a young mechanist who had taken over after Mordan's death. "At least 12 individuals on this station are not who they claim to be." The revelation sent shock waves through the council. The idea that their peaceful society could be penetrated by enemy agents was almost as disturbing as the attacks themselves. "How is that possible?" Vexhai asked. "They use advanced biological modification to mimic other species," Colvex explained. "Some of them have been here for months, gathering intelligence and preparing for the attack." Stone stepped forward. "My team can help you identify and capture these infiltrators, but we'll need to use interrogation methods that your people aren't comfortable with." "Absolutely not," the Crystalline Collective representative declared. "We will not compromise our principles even in the face of infiltration. Then people are going to die," Stone said bluntly. "These aren't peaceful refugees or diplomatic representatives. They're enemy soldiers gathering intelligence for the next attack." The argument was interrupted by alarms throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts echoed through the corridors as Colvex's security teams reported a biological attack in the civilian quarters. One of the suspected infiltrators had released some kind of toxin into the air recycling system. Stone and his Marines responded immediately, moving through the affected areas with protective gear and medical supplies. What they found was horrifying. The toxin was designed specifically to target the nervous systems of council species. Hundreds of aliens were convulsing on the floor, foam coming from their mouths as their bodies shut down. Sergeant Maria Santos worked frantically to treat the victims, but the toxin was beyond anything in their medical databases. "We need to find the source and stop it now," she reported over the radio. "If this spreads to other sections, we could lose thousands." The search for the infiltrator led Stone's team through the station's maintenance tunnels. They found him in the central air processing facility, preparing to release a second, more potent batch of the biological weapon. The creature looked like a Verdani, but when Stone shot it, the false bark skin fell away to reveal gray flesh underneath. The interrogation that followed was brutal and efficient. Stone used methods that would have horrified the council leaders, but within minutes he had extracted the locations of the other infiltrators and the details of their mission. 11 more enemy agents were captured throughout the station. Each one carried biological weapons designed to target specific council species. If they had succeeded in their mission, every alien on the station would have died within hours. The aftermath was even more difficult than the attack itself. The council had to face the reality that their peaceful society had been penetrated and nearly destroyed by enemies who looked exactly like their friends and allies. Trust, which had been the foundation of their civilization for thousands of years, was now a luxury they could not afford. Ambassador Cross found herself defending not just Stone's actions, but humanity's entire approach to warfare. "You want to put Commander Stone on trial for saving your lives," she said to the assembled council. "But the real question you need to ask is whether your civilization can survive an enemy that recognizes no moral boundaries. If we abandon our principles, what are we fighting to preserve?" Vexhai asked. "Your lives," Cross replied simply. "Your children's lives, the continuation of your species. Everything else can be rebuilt, but extinction is permanent." The debate raged on, but Morrison could see that some of the aliens were beginning to understand. The younger council members, especially those who had lost friends in the attacks, were starting to question whether their peaceful ideals were compatible with survival against an enemy dedicated to their total destruction. Late that night, Morrison, received a secret message requesting a private meeting. When he arrived at the specified location, he found 3 council members waiting for him. Kolvex, a young Verdani named Felnar, and surprisingly, one of Vexhi's own advisors. "We need to talk," Kolvex said quietly. "About what comes next." Morrison realized that the galaxy's age of peace was coming to an end, and some of its leaders were finally beginning to understand what that meant. The secret meeting took place in an abandoned research lab deep within Harmony Station. Chief Kolvex had chosen the location carefully, somewhere the official council monitoring systems could not record their conversation. Captain Jake Morrison arrived to find 3 alien leaders who looked desperate and frightened. 12 more worlds died yesterday, Kolvex said without introduction. "The hegemony is moving faster than we predicted. At this rate, they will reach the core council worlds within 2 weeks." Morrison studied the 3 aliens. Kolvex was young for a mechanist, his organic and artificial parts showing signs of recent stress. Felnar was a Verdani whose bark-like skin had lost its healthy green color. The third was Advisor Nelthar, one of Vexhi's closest counselors whose silver skin looked almost gray in the dim lighting. "What do you want from me?" Morrison asked. Nelthar spoke first. "We want you to teach us how to fight like humans." The words hung in the air like a confession. These aliens were asking him to help them abandon 3,000 years of peaceful civilization in order to survive the next few weeks. "The official council position is that Commander Stone should be arrested for war crimes," Morrison pointed out. "The official council position is going to get us all killed," Felnar said, his wooden features twisting with frustration. "We need to learn human warfare tactics, but we need to maintain plausible deniability with our populations." Morrison understood what they were really asking. They wanted to secretly train a group of alien soldiers in human combat methods while publicly condemning those same methods. It was the kind of political compromise that might save their lives but would destroy their moral authority. "I can't do that," Morrison said firmly. "You're asking me to help you become hypocrites." Kolvex's optical sensors focused intently on the human captain. "Then what do you suggest?" "I suggest you make a choice. Either you're going to fight this war with everything you have, or you're going to lose it with your principles intact. But you can't have both." Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts filled the corridors as long-range sensors detected another massive hegemony fleet approaching. This one was 3 times larger than the first attack force. In the main council chamber, panic was setting in. The official defense fleet had been rebuilt over the past week, but everyone knew it would not be enough. The new ships carried slightly more powerful weapons, but they were still designed for peacekeeping rather than total war. Commander Alex Stone stood before the council with a proposal that would have been unthinkable just days earlier. "Give me operational command of the defense fleet," he said. "Let me coordinate the battle using human tactical doctrine." "Absolutely not," Councillor Vexhi replied immediately. "We will not hand control of our military to someone who has already demonstrated a complete disregard for the laws of war." "Your laws of war don't apply when your enemy wants to exterminate you completely," Stone replied. "This isn't a territorial dispute or a resource conflict. This is genocide on a galactic scale." Dr. Lisa Park stepped forward with her latest analysis of hegemony communications. What she had discovered would change everything. "I've been monitoring their internal transmissions," she announced. "They're not just planning to eliminate the council species. They're using this galaxy as a testing ground for weapons they plan to use against other galaxies." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The hegemony was not just a threat to local civilization, they were a threat to life itself on a universal scale. "How many other galaxies?" the Crystalline Collective representative asked quietly. "All of them," Park replied. "Their ultimate goal is the elimination of all non-hegemony life in the observable universe. We're just the first target." The scope of the threat was beyond anything the Council had imagined. They were not just fighting for their own survival, but for the survival of countless civilizations that did not even know they were in danger. Captain Morrison made the decision that would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. "I'm authorizing Commander Stone to implement full human military doctrine," he announced. "We're going to stop the hegemony, but we're going to do it our way." "You have no authority to make that decision," Vex High protested. "I'm making it anyway," Morrison replied. "You can arrest me after we win." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Stone coordinated the defense using tactics that horrified the Council observers, but proved devastatingly effective against the hegemony forces. Human ships, supported by hastily modified Council vessels, engaged in psychological warfare that targeted the hegemony command structure. They broadcast false communications to create confusion among enemy units. They used suicide attacks against high-value targets. They targeted civilian infrastructure on hegemony ships to create panic and disorder. Sergeant Maria Santos led boarding parties that captured hegemony vessels through methods that would be considered torture under Council law. She used her medical knowledge to keep enemy prisoners alive while extracting information through pain and fear. The intelligence she gathered allowed the human forces to predict and counter hegemony tactics. Corporal Danny Rivers coordinated the systematic destruction of hegemony logistics networks. His teams targeted supply ships, communication relays, and repair facilities using weapons designed to cause maximum psychological impact. The explosions were carefully timed to create terror among surviving hegemony forces. Lieutenant Katie Bell managed information warfare that turned hegemony forces against each other. She intercepted their communications and inserted false orders that caused friendly fire incidents and strategic confusion. She created propaganda that exploited divisions within the hegemony command structure. The turning point came when Stone authorized an attack that crossed every line the Council had drawn regarding warfare ethics. A captured hegemony commander revealed the location of their primary fleet base, but only under interrogation methods that the aliens considered torture. Using that information, human forces launched a preemptive strike against the base while it was full of non-combatant personnel. Supply workers, maintenance crews, and administrative staff died alongside military targets. The attack crippled the hegemony's ability to continue their expansion, but it also demonstrated humanity's willingness to accept any moral cost for victory. The hegemony forces, faced with an enemy that fought without ethical constraints, began to collapse psychologically. Their rigid command structure could not adapt to human unpredictability. Soldiers who had been trained to expect easy victories against peaceful civilizations found themselves facing opponents who were more brutal and creative than they were. Within 3 weeks, the hegemony threat to Council space was eliminated. Their fleets retreated to the outer rim, leaving behind a galaxy that was safe but fundamentally changed. The age of peace was over, replaced by an age where survival required constant vigilance and the willingness to do terrible things to protect civilization. The aftermath was as difficult as the war itself. The Council formally condemned every action the humans had taken, while quietly adopting modified versions of human tactics for their own military forces. They established new training programs based on human doctrine while maintaining that such methods were morally unacceptable. Commander Stone faced a military tribunal not for his actions during the war, but for the precedent he had established. The prosecution argued that once a civilization accepts that survival justifies any action, there is no limit to the atrocities it will commit. Stone's defense was simple and direct. "I define war crimes as actions taken against those who do not threaten your existence," he said to the tribunal. "Everything I did was against an enemy committed to universal genocide. When someone wants to kill every living thing in the universe, the only crime is letting them succeed." The verdict was complicated. Stone was officially censured for violating Council law, but he was also quietly awarded the highest honors several Council species could bestow. The message was clear. The galaxy needed people willing to do what others could not, even if it could never officially acknowledge that need. Ambassador Helen Cross negotiated humanity's continued membership in the Council, but under new terms that reflected the changed reality. Humans would be consulted on all major security decisions, but they would also be held responsible for actions that other species could not stomach. Dr. Park established early warning systems designed to detect future threats before they could develop into galactic crises. Her work became the foundation for a more aggressive approach to galaxy security, though the Council continued to struggle with the moral implications of preventive warfare. In the final scene, Stone stood in a secret training facility teaching advanced combat tactics to volunteers from across the Council species. His students were beings who had accepted that their peaceful nature made them vulnerable to enemies who shared no such values. As he watched a young Zephyrian practice interrogation techniques on a simulation target, Stone reflected on what they had accomplished and what it had cost them. The galaxy was safe, but safety had required them to become something their ancestors would not have recognized.